Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Absolutely amazing to see so many friends. I want to thank you for coming. And I say we because I speak for the children, their foster families, the guardian ad litem, and the community as a large. I thank you for coming today, for your support here. Thank you. The Children's Guardian Fund consists of, that is to say our board, who is here, consists of 13 dedicated souls who are community leaders and activists. They do the heavy lifting, supported by one full-time employee, our hardworking Tanya Schrott. Also in support, we have an advisory board made up of 10 members, and I see some of you in the audience who perform just as the name implies, as an advisory, providing advice and outreach to the community. At an annual breakfast we hold with the advisory board, we sit around and kick around ideas, talking about what we can do, what can be done, what needs to be done. We look for answers to the child protection business. What can we do, we ask ourselves, to change outcomes? Each year, and I have to point out that we are 15 years old, the Children's Guardian Fund is 15 years old, and this is our 13th annual luncheon. We raise money from a standing start. We start with zero budgeting. We start with a blank sheet of paper, and we raise the money that we need to support what it is that we do, and I'll just tell you what that is in a second. Because we start with a blank screen, we need to demonstrate to the community the need for the guardian ad litem, the child support, what we're doing. We have to explain and tell them who we are and why Children's Guardian Fund is different from the guardian ad litem, our partner. It gets complicated. You know, they always talk about an elevator speech. You need to be able to get on an elevator with somebody, and within a couple floors you need to be able to explain exactly what it is you do. Well, our elevator speech requires a pretty tall building, but we're willing to walk you through that. Let me just tell you the quick elements of it. We asked the community to support the Children's Guardian Fund because we, in turn, provide support in 3 specific areas. One, Voices for Every Child. We support the Guardian Ad Litem program. Pam is the executive director of the Guardian Ad Litem program in this area. We support the Guardian Ad Litem program itself, which provides court-appointed, trained volunteers to advocate for foster children in all court proceedings. They are, as Judge Adams says, the eyes and ears of the judge. A crucial program. Working through the Guardian Ad Litem program, we provide help the unmet and special needs of the more than 1,000 children that are in the care of the courts in this 12th Judicial District. There's really probably 1,200, right, Pam, as they're coming through. The number is growing, who have been placed in foster homes because they have been neglected or abandoned or abused. Just think of that. Those kids have been taken out of their homes, placed in this new, safer environment, but brand new. They are a very special crowd, a very special group that we need to support. In the third area, we're dealing with youths, can't say that, youths in transition, which is a very small startup program, and very hard to say, it turns out. They are children looking to age out of foster care into independent living. And this population needs special support because, as we know, when they age out, they go right off the edge, and we need to provide support and help for them. And we do that through a program, our Next Step program, which provides mentoring and tutoring, mostly through the volunteer kids at New College. So that's the three legs of our business. That's our elevator speech. And now we can go on to something else. A couple of acknowledgments. All of these things always require acknowledgments, right? I mean, when you see your program, you will see that we have people who are guardian angels, star sponsors, and cherubs. And we should acknowledge that those are the people that make this kind of a presentation, an event, successful. And I would specifically ask you to look at your program to see that we should have special thanks for the All-Star Foundation, Grassi, McGillicuddy, Appisdorf. They got you. They know you, Grassi. Well, I can't imagine that. Ah, damn. The Appisdorf Foundation is here. Argosy University that asked their incoming students to make a contribution that would make an effect in the community, and they chose us to say, okay, and they sent us, each student sent us a contribution, and we are delighted and flattered, and we're hoping that you'll keep that going. The Bank of America Foundation, Jim Springer Wealth Management at UBS, his group is here. Northern Trust, the Rotary Club of Lakewood Ranch, and the Sadler Jones Foundation. So we have a special thanks for them, and thank you. One round of applause would be terrific. While I'm up here, I'd like to also point out a couple of other groups that need to be recognized. And I think first and foremost, we should recognize the organizing chairs of the event. Carol and Mort Siegler, and Nancy and Chuck Parrish. It was an absolutely incredible job of getting this thing together. We have a board of directors and we have an advisory board, and I mentioned those. I would just like those people who are serving in that capacity to stand up so we can recognize your contribution. That's good. This is a hard-working group that really puts a shoulder to the wheel. We spend a lot of time together. We work hard together, and we are growing and doing better every year. I'd like to point out specifically my friend Bob Merrill. Where is he? Bob, where are you? Bob Merrill was a recipient of the Guardian Ad Litem Volunteer of the Year Award from the 12th Judicial District. Bob, congratulations. That's great, Bob. They picked the right guy. Susan Stockham, is she here? Where is she? We need to, last year's honoree, Susan Stockham. We honored her for her work on behalf of adopted children, and she's here, and she's brought a table full of folks, and we welcome her. Thank you, Susan. I think that's all we have for the moment. Hal, are you there? Hal Headley? Yeah. Hal Headley, as you know, or you should know, he's the honorary chair of this event and an extraordinary guy. And we are pleased to have him in that role. Come up here, Hal. And you and I are going to, let me just tell you just a thing about Hal, if you don't already know that. I knew him when he had this whiskers like I did. So. What happened? Hal has served as the president and chief executive officer of the Child Protection Center in 2 tranches. Is that a good word? From 1989 to 1998, and then he returned to the agency from 2000 to 2010 when he retired. He's got a long history of service to the community, and we're proud that Hal Headley is on our board. Thank you, Hal.
Thank you.
I was just talking to Grassi about my friend Hal, and we both agreed that he's warm, he's smart, and he's committed, and he has been a big factor in the child care business in this area. Hal?
Thank you. All right. Thanks a lot, Alan. I got to lower it like I always do. Before I introduce our incredible honoree, I've got to brag for just a minute about my table over there, table number 6. We have some incredible people in this room. Before I brag about them, I'll tell you, our board and our advisory board was really kind of concerned, nervous, worried about these 1,200 kids. We can take a sigh of relief when you look around this room and you see the Stuart Stearns, the Grazie McGillicuddies, and the Lee Hayworths here. We're going to do it. We're going to save the children one at a time. We can do it. So let me just tell you a little bit about our table, though. And I wasn't supposed to say anything about it. I've been married to her for 42 years. I'll do this at great risk. But my wife has taught and helped kids for 40 years. We can get this right. Anyway, I know for a fact that's my wife, Luann, and she, for 40 years, has worked with special kids, at-risk kids, and a lot of regular kids that were at risk. That's the truth about educators. So I'm really proud of what she does, and I'm in big trouble for mentioning her. But think about me tonight when she's yelling at me, right? Never, never. And my daughter, Heather Annan, is a nurse, and she epitomizes that healing profession, and I'm so proud of her. I happen to think that the nurses are fantastic people. And sitting beside her, when you go by the new Child Protection Center, right, Grazie, the new, and it looks good. There are 2 reasons. I'll tell you about one in a minute, but one of them is the man who really runs the grounds and the buildings and keeps them looking spiffy, and that's my son-in-law, Larry Annan. And if you need any handyman work, he can do it, okay? That's a free ad, Larry. We have 4 CEOs at our table. One of them couldn't be here. Philip Tavel called in sick, and he's a very dear friend, and he said, I'm not going to come and sneeze on everybody's food. He is the CEO of Children First. When you hear about these 4 CEOs, you can know the other reason why we can take a deep breath and go, everything's good. And that is, we've got Stephanie Feltz from Girls Incorporated. Isn't that great? Yes. And Bill Sadlow, Boys and Girls Club CEO. And, you know, my successor and a man that I dearly love, Doug Staley, Child Protection Center CEO. And then we got a couple other people at our table I want to brag about. And one of them is Scott Anderson. He is the Gulf Coast Community Foundation's senior philanthropic advisor. And let me tell you what else he is. In addition to helping bring dollars to this community so we can save these children and families, he's also a man that reminds us sometimes, guys, don't take yourself too seriously. Enjoy life. Thank you, Scott. Thank you. And he really does a beautiful job of that. I hope I don't offend anybody from Penn State, but these 2 men, if they had been, honestly, if they had been in Happy Valley, this would never have gotten this far. And I just know it. They said, well, maybe it wouldn't have been handed over to us, but these are 2 of the men that do more to solve crimes against children and protect children than any detectives I know anywhere, period. And that's Detective David Grant and Detective Ken Halpin from Sarasota Police Department.
I said earlier nice things about Hal Headley, and it was only the beginning. He's just a special, wonderful guy, and we're delighted and pleased that he's on our board and is performing this function and helps with the leadership. And as your token of our esteem, I may keep this myself because it's wine.
Ooh.
We are providing Dr. Headley with a absolutely magnificent bottle of red wine, and it comes from Napa Valley, and Napa Valley, and we're thrilled that you have it, and I'm available to help you drink it.
All right, that's a deal. Thank you, Alan.
The Children's Guardian Fund Board this year decided to recognize the outstanding people in the child protection business. The board unanimously voted to give it to an outstanding leader in that area, and I would like to have him come up and accept this first annual Lifetime Child Advocacy Award. Judge Duran Adams, please. Let me bring this over here to show you what we're talking about. Somehow that's very emblematic. It's very wonderful. My hands are shaking. Okay? This is the, he's asking. This is the first award. This is the first annual award. We'll do it every year. This is the first of these. It's a Lifetime Child Advocacy Award, awarded to Judge Duran Adams. Come on this side. Judge, go to the floor.
Hey, feel free to keep moving while I'm talking. My first job ever was a fourth grade teacher, and I had a rule: if you need to go to the restroom, go. But seriously, feel free to move around. What I'm going to do while you're checking out the silent auction, and again helping us save Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto's children one child at a time, and that's our circuit. Don't forget that. Those of you that think it only happens in Sarasota, it's Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto. This was an exciting day for me when they called and said, Hal, we want you to introduce Judge Duran Adams. He's really a very unique and special jurist, but I was worried because when I first thought about it, I said, you know, I'm afraid the judge is one of these people whose good deeds went unnoticed, and I won't be able to find anything to say about him or any of his good deeds. Well, gee, let's see. Did it make it? Oh, I need more height. Story of my life. I need more height. I could get Judge Thomas to come up and Judge Krug to come up and help me. But anyway, seriously, most of his good deeds have gone unnoticed because you weren't in his courtroom back in Manatee County when I first arrived here in the early 80s, and you didn't see what he did for children. But anyway, real quickly, my introduction for Judge Adams. It's true that he did retire recently, which was a big loss to the circuit. He was our circuit judge from 1984 to 2008. And I want to tell you about some of his accomplishments, but let me tell you about 5 things that are not so about Judge Adams that you might have thought they are. Number 1, he is not an FSU Seminole. He's a Gator. So go Gators. Yes, he graduated from USF I mean, UCF Law School, UF Law School, I'll get this right. He graduated from UF Law School, so he definitely is not a Seminole. He is not a founding member of the rock band Duran Duran. A lot of the young lawyers used to say that before he came to court, but I think they learned quickly that wasn't so. He is not, was not, and will never be a patient jurist or person when it comes to protecting children and advocating for them. There was no half speed with Judge Adams. You either did it or you didn't. He was not willing to let our community or our judicial system continue to fail to seek new solutions to family violence challenges. He was always honest about that. And by the way, he was one that reminded us often, really the term is family violence. There's nothing domestic about it. And number 5, and much to the chagrin of all of us from Sarasota, he is from Manatee County. He's not from Sarasota County. Wish he was. Wish he and Carol lived here, but they've lived for a number of years in Palmetto. He went to high school in Tampa. I had the pleasure of training under Judge Adams, and he'll refute that and say that I helped him, but he helped me a lot more. He and Judge Paul Logan helped me very much in my first position in this community as guardian ad litem director. Judge Smith hired me, and at the end of the interview, he said, now you need to learn how to pronounce it. It's not guardian ad litem. That was kind of nice. He and Jack Byers hired me, and I'm real honored about that. The only time we ever got nervous in working with Judge Adams was there was one thing that made us all nervous when we went into his courtroom, and that was that we would ever let him down for not being prepared to represent the needs, the best interests of the child. That was the only time you ever got nervous about being in his courtroom. In an article in the Herald Tribune, he gave us a quote that we framed in all 3 of our offices in DeSoto, Bradenton, and Sarasota, and that was that famous quote, "The guardians are the eyes and ears of the court. We depend on them for best interest of child advice." And that meant so much to our volunteer guardians and still does today. If I tell you all the awards that he got, we would be late back to work, which some of you probably wouldn't mind, and I wouldn't mind since I don't have to go back to work. But anyway, in 1990, he helped create an integrated family law division, and trust me, before we had that, we had problems. A family could appear for 3 different issues and have 3 different judges, and so the integration of family law was a big thing for all of us. In 1992, he initiated a gender bias court watch program. And in 95, he was invited to D.C. To present nationally at a national conference and to share information. And a lot of what he did on gender bias really became part of a national movement. In 1993, he founded the Family Violence Council in Manatee County. In 1994, the Florida Supreme Court created a Family Court Steering Committee, and guess who they chose as their chair? Absolutely, Judge Duran Adams. And they did things like fairly allocating the trust fund dollars, which really are important when you're trying to help children. And he created a clearinghouse for judges and trial lawyers and others so we could get information about resources. And, you know, even the forms, there was the standardization of that. Judge Adams always felt that the judicial system held promise way beyond just resolving legal disputes. As a judge in juvenile court, he organized a reading program. This is really neat for kids that were in the dependency system, oftentimes delinquents, and they would meet for 2 hours in the Central Library in Bradenton and get help with reading, because guess what we found out about these kids? They typically were in bad health, and oftentimes, I know the one I was guardian for got caught for driving with no license. I said, "Kenny, why don't you take your test?" And he said, "I can't read." As an educator, I went, oh. He helped start the comprehensive drug treatment program. He wasn't happy to simply incarcerate a drug abuser. He wanted to help them. In 1990, the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers named him the outstanding jurist for the state of Florida. In 1991, the Sarasota Bar named him its Distinguished Judicial Service Award. In 1994, the Manatee Victim Rights Council named him for his outstanding contribution to victim services. Victim services, very important to this man. In 95, he got Outstanding Child Advocate of the Year from the Manatee Community Council for Children. In 2004, the Bar Association from Sarasota County gave him the Distinguished Service Award for commemoration of his work with the landmark Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. Judge Adams cared, and this is pretty wild when you think about it. Yeah, he cares about his two sons, but let me tell you what. He cared about Linda Brown and the fact that she wasn't allowed to go to the school in her neighborhood. And he taught us that that separate but equal was not okay. And he preached that, and he lived that as a jurist and as a person. In 2006, he and Judge Williams, with Manatee Educational TV, did an evolution of the American jury system. And if you've ever been a juror, it's very confusing as to what to do. Well, now we have a video, and it's widely used, statewide, maybe even beyond the state of Florida. And then he also organized an interracial, interfaith breakfast to honor Dr. Martin Luther King and the good work that he did. So you can see the variety of things that Judge Adams has done to make us a better community. He's a native Floridian, along with his wife Carol. They do live north of the river, and she's done a lot to make sure education, public education for kids north of the river is equal. And that's always a challenge if you know the geography of Manatee County. There's so much more I could say. I just want to say to Judge Adams, thank you, and it's been an honor to know you and to continue to know you, and I'm so proud of Children's Guardian Fund. I will ask each of you to deputize yourself when you leave here today. You need to, like Judge Adams, become a part of the solution if you're not already. We need your help. These kids need support, both mentoring and financial, and Children's Guardian Fund can provide that through the guardian ad litem and the wonderful work they do. So without any further ado, and I'm going to keep this, Judge, I'm not going to give it back to you. I'm going to invite Judge Durand Adams to the podium.
That was the most ambitious introduction in the history of anything. Thank you, Hal, although I can only disappoint you from this point forward with my remarks. It has been my experience that the more I talk, the less people tend to listen. So I promised Alan Quinby that my remarks would be brief. Made a great deal briefer by virtue of Hal's introduction. But thank you, Hal. I do want to thank two people publicly this afternoon. One of them is Hal Headley. I want to thank Hal Headley for getting me through my turns in juvenile court in one piece. I thank God I had Hal Headley to depend on in the tough times when the lives of children could very well have been at risk. I always had complete confidence in his judgment and leadership when he was, for many years, the executive director of the Guardian Ad Litem program and then later on the president of the Child Protection Center. I believe that Hal Headley made the lives of neglected, abandoned, and abused children safer beyond measure. The vast majority of those children who were saved by Hal have never heard his name, have no idea who he is. But that's okay, because everyone in this room knows what Hal did, and we will be forever grateful for your service, Hal. Thank you very much. There's one other person here today I have to mention by name, and that is Susan Malucci. Susan, where are you? Would you stand up, please? Susan Malucci. Susan and I go back to the summer of 1984. I was only 6 months into my first judicial assignment, which was juvenile court in Sarasota. Susan was a brand new lawyer, and she prosecuted all of the delinquency and all of the dependency cases in the last half of 1984 in Sarasota. In those days, Susan Malucci was the state of Florida. She handled her responsibilities with tremendous dedication and skill. Now Susan is a magistrate in Manatee County, and she does her job with patience, intelligence, and thoroughness. But that's not why I wanted to publicly recognize Susan Malucci this afternoon. The thing for which I am most impressed by her is her inspiration in creating the Next Step program. She had an idea about how to make the lives of abused, abandoned, or neglected children significantly better. And she performed the hard magic which is necessary in order to turn an idea into something real. Susan is one of those people who has blessed the lives of others because she believed in something much bigger than herself, and then she went out and did something about it. So thank you very much, Susan Malucci. Now I would like to speak in praise of great men and women. When I became a judge in the beginning of 1984, my first assignment, as I've already mentioned, was to preside over juvenile court in Sarasota. Back in those days, there may not have been as much appreciation for the importance of juvenile court as we later came to have. I will say that Judge Rick DeFuria, who is here today, was an early local acolyte of the philosophy which held juvenile court out as one of the most important and critical divisions of our court system. So, Rick, you should be mentioned because of that. You were way ahead of your time. But back in those days in our state, it was often the newest judge, which necessarily meant the one with the least judicial experience, who started out in juvenile court. I brought the zeal of a newcomer to the job. In a very short time, I came to the conclusion that juvenile court could be considered as the most important court we have for the same reasons everyone in this room is familiar with today. I also found out it was a very stressful place. I, as the judge, usually had the last say in regard to what happened with abused, abandoned, or neglected children. In some cases, those words, abused, abandoned, neglected, really don't do justice to the seriousness of the danger within which these children lived before the state intervened in their lives. Some of the cases brought into juvenile court involved matters of extreme urgency. And with the way the judicial system is designed, the court is left with the responsibility of the reduction of all of the information churned up and presented in order to make some of the most important decisions a judge will ever be called upon to make in a long career. Does the child stay in protective custody, so to speak, or go home? There is little certainty in life, and we rarely personally expect it. But juvenile court is not real life in the way we think of ordinary life. It is often bigger than that. And so we have come as a society to practically demand a degree of certainty with the decisions which are made in juvenile court, because we have come to believe that systems are by design more foolproof than ordinary life. That's just the way it is. Which means that when I was a juvenile judge, I lived in the world of dread. I know I used those same words last week at another occasion in describing the stress judges live under, but I thought it was so apt it deserved to be repeated again here today. Every time I would see the teaser on the 11 o'clock news when I was the juvenile judge, the teaser that said, 5-year-old killed by mother's boyfriend, details at 11, I would say a little prayer. Please, Lord, don't let it be one of mine. And I know anybody who has ever had the responsibility, the awesome responsibility of presiding as a judge in juvenile court, or being a guardian ad litem, or having anything to do with juvenile court and dependency, when you see those news flashes on TV, you say the same thing to yourself. Please, Lord, don't let it be one of mine. Which brings us to the main reason I made it through all of those years with any sleep at all. The guardians ad litem. These men and women are my eyes and ears. I did say that almost 30 years ago. And at the time, it was the truth of my judicial salvation. I discovered pretty early in my juvenile court experience that of all of the constituents of dependency proceedings, the guardian ad litem sometimes was the only one unburdened by any other consideration than what was in the best interest of the child. I would tell the guardians that their job was to make recommendations to the court which the guardian believed were in the best interest of the child, to the exclusion of every other person in the universe. The guardians were not there to please the lawyers, the Department of Children and Family Services, the parents and relatives of the child, or me. Their concerns were to be for this child and only this child. Because of this, I thought it was important to make a deal with all of the guardians. They had the right and responsibility to speak up in court and tell me if I was about to make a bad decision, if they thought it was so, even if everyone else, including me, thought that I was right. At first, I sensed that there was some reluctance to take me up on this offer, but eventually, I found out that the guardians were able to elide their natural hesitation to tell a judge face-to-face in open court, don't do it. And so they did, respectfully, of course, but forcefully nevertheless. I have found guardians ad litem to be, almost without exception, bright and articulate people who are wholly dedicated to their mission. One of the reasons they are so dedicated is they don't have to be there at all. They're volunteers. And as volunteers, they have the power of belief going for them. They believe so strongly in their mission. I have always had the greatest respect for those who choose to devote a part of their lives to protecting children who, through no fault of their own, are pinned up against the wall. Those of us who have done these kinds of jobs for a living are acutely aware of the stress which can saturate the lives of people who have the great responsibility to protect some of the most vulnerable among us, our children. I am so glad that I have this opportunity to publicly thank all of the guardians ad litem who have served our community so faithfully and for so long. I should give each of you a Lifetime Achievement Award for what you have done for me and my sense of well-being. Whenever I'm at a party or some other similar gathering of people, and I meet someone who says he or she is a guardian ad litem, I am very much taken with the selfless quality of human generosity that being a guardian ad litem implies. No matter who else I may have met on one of those occasions, it's always the guardian who invariably impresses me the most. And I'll tell my wife on the way home, do you remember that woman who said she was a guardian ad litem? Well, I'll say to her, and I'll say to you too, that guardian ad litem is more than a guardian ad litem. Guardians ad litem are really angels. So, I thank all of you who have come today to be a part of this occasion, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today, and I thank the Children's Guardian Fund for considering me for this award. Thank you very much.